Number 10. Fight Man. So Fight Man is designed to be a character that everyone hates. He's meant to be brash, annoying, and awful. His one-shot comic demonstrates this perfectly, which I mostly want to tell you about because the tagline is "one shot is all he needs," which is so corny yet memorable it's infuriating. Fight Man regularly destroys the city, injures the very people he's trying to help, is broke, so is constantly trying to sell merch that no one wants. He had to move back in with his parents and he doesn't even appreciate them. He had 15 sidekicks that he got killed, and the whole city eventually sues him. So yes, the hate, we have consensus. Deserved. He's a terrible hero. He gets the job done, but at tremendous cost to the city. He also has Freakazoid's haircut. Fight Man is very 90s. He's meant to be a joke, and some of them do land. I think my favorite is when one of his villains comes down to the legal offices where he's trying to deal with his ex-wife, trying to get out of alimony, breaks down the wall and is all, "You better come out here or she's dead." And Fight Man is like, "Okay, fine, do it." So his villain goes, "Oh, okay, let's just have a normal fight then." The 90s was way more self-aware than people give it credit for. Number 9. Guy Gardner. So Guy Gardner is a Green Lantern. He first debuted in Green Lantern Volume 2, number 59 back in 1968, and he wasn't always the brash jerk he is known as today. That happened in the 80s when his character was completely revamped from, well, mild-mannered and not really being used to a, and I quote, jingoistic parody of an ultra-macho red-blooded American male. Quote time. "When I took over Green Lantern, John Stewart was the GL, but everybody expected Hal Jordan to come back and relegate John to backup duty once again. I decided that John deserved better. So I asked myself, why can't there be 2 GLs? And that led to, why can't there be more than 2? That eventually led to the GL Corps, but along the way I decided to resurrect the lost GL, Guy Gardner, who had been terminally bland and then brain damaged, a completely useless character as things stood. I was being a good soldier, trying to help my friend Dick Giordano sell the book, and it turned out to be the second biggest mistake of my entire career, because ever since, DC has claimed that since Joe and I didn't create the original Guy Gardner, our completely new take counts for nothing. But the damage was done. Guy was the jerk of every team he was on, knocked out by Batman with one punch. They've toned it down in recent years, but he's still considered hot-headed and a bit of a loose cannon, and well, rude. So it's understandable why some people hate him, particularly in canon. Still not over that him, Ice, and Superman love triangle. Lots of people like how Guy is because it makes him different. He definitely stands out. But when you need a hero, do you need someone who's gonna moon you and make fun of his allies who are doing poorly? He'll get the job done in a pinch. Hey, when you pull a massive character 180 like that and make it something other characters react to, it lands for some people and not for others. Number 8. Star Fox. Now whenever I put Star Fox on a list, people have strong feelings. And some people think I'm talking about the game. For a moment, just a brief flash. Star Fox first debuted in Iron Man number 55 back in 1973. He is Eros, brother of Thanos, and well, people didn't think a lot about his pheromone date rape powers at first. This would become a plot point. Star Fox would be put on trial for sexual assault when married women came forward claiming that he had been using his powers on them to seduce them. The panels are quite horrifying. They don't even remember and he's all, "You're welcome, he just banged a superhero." He's being defended by Jennifer Walters, aka the She-Hulk, but then she starts to suspect that he used his powers like this on her. And you know what? She's not right. She just has poor judgment. Star Fox? Really, Jennifer? But she has to Hulk out and get him mind probed to find this out, which also mind probing, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But what he did do was he did make her fall in love with and marry John Jameson. You see what they did there? This was a way to retcon another marriage out of existence. Comics hate marriage unless you're reading Sue. But wait, this was all Thanos' fault. He implanted a memory in his mind that made him unstable, and that's why he used his powers this way, so not his fault. Yeah, that solved nothing. And whenever you make a character a rapist like this, you give the next writer an impossible task. A curveball, because in canon the characters don't want anything to do with him, and outside of it, people don't really want to either. It's a hard thing to get behind, especially with such a weak sauce explanation. False memories from a Thanos clone made him do it. If the memory is fake, we cannot litigate. He's still being sidelined because of this. People get mad about people not liking Star Fox for this, because they feel like he was a good character who got dealt a bad arc, or also because of insert current year comics. Let's leave Star Fox alone for now. Number 7. Deadpool. So Deadpool is a fan favorite with many people, but in universe, other people can't stand the merc with a mouth. They think he's insane. He has few friends. But you know whose friendship he didn't have to bribe? Cable. He had to bend over backwards for Spidey's, but that is neither here nor there. Most people in the Marvel universe find Deadpool annoying at best and dangerous at worst. Deadpool can be dark and he kills regularly and is up for hire. Just because, oh, he was married and oh, he had/has a daughter. Kids are always just one reboot away from being retconned out of existence. Less so at Marvel. At Marvel, it's more likely they're going to be sent outside the timeline to be hyper-aged. Again, Cable. At different points of Deadpool's history, he didn't even have his memory in order. He couldn't remember killing. In his alternate universe stories, he's killed all of the Marvel universe, even breaking the fourth wall to come for the writers. He can be abrasive, intrusive, and hinder rescue situations. So yeah, it's completely understandable why other heroes and characters find him hard to be around. Even people that do like him need a break. It's why characters who can stand him stand out so much. And of course, shipping. Spidey pool is huge, bigger than Cable pool, even after Deadpool 2. I need more Cable pool. Their team-up comic before they get divorced is everything, and they call it a divorce, that's not me doing it. Number 6. Booster Gold. Booster Gold has had quite the journey in comics, and is, confession time, one of my favorite heroes. For a time, he was my favorite. Also, Heroes in Crisis did him no favors, or that Batman arc, The Gift, but I blame Tom King for that, not my Booster. He first debuted in Booster Gold #1 back in 1986, and was from the future, the 25th century, so actually the same time as the Reverse Flash. Fun fact. Booster came back to the past to pretend to be a hero because his life was falling apart. He'd been caught throwing sports matches, so he was working as a security guard at a museum, where he teamed up with a security robot, stole a bunch of tech, and went back in time to be a hero. But his real goal was to get famous. Booster was in it for the money and the fame, and he wasn't shy about letting people know about it. This led many to dislike him, and his untrained nature meant he wasn't the best in a fight. And he drew in so much press to them, by always staying for interviews and actively clamoring for them. Yeah, Batman hated him at the start. But over time, Booster would come to take his responsibilities seriously, and get caught up in some serious time travel shenanigans, and learn that, well, he can't just do what he wants, and the fame isn't worth anything without the people you care about. Ted Kord's death messed him up. But then, Rebirth. Rebirth Booster is not okay. He's more unstable, he's less responsible, and a bit back to being almost basic Booster. And also, the rest of the heroes don't like him too much again. Poor Booster, he's taken back to base so often, and whenever he gets adapted, it's always straight up 80s Booster. So yeah, depending upon the era, the hate for Booster 100% justified, especially by heroes with a very defined moral mission. Number 5. Raven. So Raven has a very specific complaint, usually by other teams, not the Teen Titans, though it does happen. And that's that she can't be trusted because of her father, Trigon, and how she is a conduit for him. And also, she has been overtaken by her dark half before, like the time she crashed Starfire and Dick's wedding and then made out with Starfire. Kelly talked about it in her scary Teen Titans facts list. Raven is an empath and has immense power. She is a powerful villain when she gives into her darker impulses. So it's understandable that certain heroes don't trust her, and if you go evil, well, I'd be cautious too. I'm with Batman, like not to that level of what if I had to kill all my teammates, but if you went evil once, it could happen again. Number 4. Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. You need to be specific, there have been multiple Captain Marvels, and Shazam was actually the first Captain Marvel. Go Billy! So Carol's introduction to the MCU was controversial, but we'll leave that aside for now and focus on comic Carol, Captain Marvel. So Carol became Captain Marvel in 2012. It was super recent in comic terms. Before that, she was Ms. Marvel. Her and Tony were friends. That matters in a minute, bear with me. When she became Captain Marvel, her character was changed slightly. She was made more aggressive and dominant, but the really big changes came during Civil War II. Listen, you don't come out of Civil War looking good. Just ask all the people from Civil War I. And Carol was pretty fascistic in Civil War II. She played the role Tony played in Civil War I, and people came out of that hating him. From commanding Ms. Marvel to set up essentially a teenage Gestapo, and also very much overstepping boundaries in the life of a girl who admires her to the point that she will lie to her parents and family so that she can patrol at night rather than do her homework. Also, she beats Tony into a coma, and this really gets people because Tony was on the upswing of liking him since the MCU revamp. So people liked Tony at that point. So yeah, it just wasn't a good look. But the thing is, in canon, just like the last Civil War, people just had to get over it. The thing is, Captain Marvel's a little different, and this is a bit more fan hate because most people in the Marvel universe got over it fast. A few bring it up now and again, but she has like post-rebirth, his coming back to life rebirth, not DC rebirth, Hal Jordan protection. This happens when writers want a character to do well, so they can't bring up things that have happened in the past, their mistakes. Captain Marvel has been rebooted numerous times, at this point multiple #1s in the span of 6 years. She's ended up becoming a controversial character, and some people stay away because they just don't want to deal with it. I really liked her past arc with Tony where he helped her overcome alcoholism, but those days are long gone. But he's over it, he calls her Care Bear now. It's okay, Care Bear, I don't mind that coma. Number 3. Reed Richards. If you've watched my videos for a while, you know that me and Reed, we have beef. I'm a closet Fantastic Four villain. But Reed has done a lot that has made many in the superhero community side-eye him. He was on the Illuminati, that secret team that was trying to preemptively stop threats. He was part of that Council of Reeds, which had far too many evil versions of him on it for my comfort. He has a cache of some of the most powerful items in the Marvel Universe. Well, had. There was the portal to the negative zone in the Baxter building. He exposed the members of the Fantastic Four to the cosmic rays on purpose. He helped build that alternate dimension prison for heroes who wouldn't register during Civil War I. Him and the Fantastic Four were put on trial for all the things they've caused. But, and it's a big but, he has recently been turned into Nice Guy Reed. You know, after God Emperor Doom and seeing his whole family die. He's turned over a new leaf. Seeing the Maker, the 1610 Ultimate Verse Reed, who is now evil, helped with that too. But he is Reed. His inventions and genius are calling. When people side-eye him, I get it. Deserved. Number 2. Hal Jordan. I love Hal Jordan, this is no secret. I also wish he had stayed dead. That too is no secret. It's complex, I know. So Hal went rogue after the destruction of Coast City during the whole death rebirth of Superman in the 90s. He also grew Reed Richards' hair streaks, always a bad sign, ended up killing the Corps and Sinestro, died in a quasi-redemption arc burning in the sun, then was the Spectre, then came back to life. The return was awesome, there was an emotion spectrum, eventually a Sinestro Corps war, but here's the thing. If you still distrusted him, you got flack for it in universe. Batman is treated like he's being extra for not trusting Hal when he literally killed the whole Corps. But what's happening with Hal these days? Well, he just destroyed the Corps, again, after he tried to arrest God and punched him in the face, then killed an innocent man. Green Lantern is interesting right now. They're all gonna be black stars and it's cause of Hal. Yeah, I can see them being pretty mad about that. Hate, justified. Again. Number 1, the Hulk. The Hulk first debuted in The Incredible Hulk #1 back in 1962, and he's caused a lot of damage. The Hulk is a monster, something the immortal Hulk shows off to great effect. Yes, he has been heroic, and when in control he can do great things, but that slips a lot, and pretty much all his friends have tried to hunt him down, and faced off against him at one point or another. He has whole task forces designed to take him down. He is feared even by his loved ones. He has multiple Hulks, with some more deadly than the ones people normally face inside him, and yet She-Hulk recently told him that he was petty for being jealous of her, because people hooted at her in the street. So yeah, even his family isn't sympathetic to him. Hulk is most hated there is. Poor Hulk, but yeah, it makes sense. There's an in-canon thing where he doesn't kill, but it's very much an okay, sure, this is so we can like him thing, like Hal was Parallax, or the Phoenix was a Force, or it was Thanos' clone's memory. They're all alive, like the people in Man of Steel or all these victims from season 1 of Arrow. One guy got an arrow to the neck, he's fine. Number 10, Galahad from Insufferable. Insufferable is a digital comic from 2012 written by Mark Waid that was meant to showcase the power of digital, that a comic could be digital only and flourish. This did not happen, and it actually did get a trade paperback release. And Insufferable slipped under the radar for many people, and digital in general has plateaued. However, what was it about? Well, it was about a father and son dynamic duo team who had had a massive public falling out, wherein their secret identities were revealed. Galahad was fulfilling the role of Boy Wonder, and used the super identity reveal that he caused to catapult himself to social media fame. Galahad is big on the Twitter, he's on forums, he stays up late arguing with trolls, he lets his dad do the legwork solving crimes, shows up, takes a selfie and claims he did all of it himself on social media, or at least that his dad is old and in the way. He sells merch and gets sponsorship deals, and as you can imagine, eventually he gets a Twitter mob turning against him. This is when he has just run into bad press, and also a bit of a stint of being an ineffectual hero. Galahad is a brat, more concerned with branding himself than stopping crime. For those who see through his facade and call him out, he does deserve some of the hate he gets. Most of it. He's low on the list because he's relatively harmless, more lame than anything else. Number 9, Crackerjack. We're heading back to Astro City. Yes, it's all happening. Crackerjack first appears in Astro City #5, and it's instantly set up as a hero that others are annoyed with. Flamboyant and flashy, he loves to swoop into a situation and take all the credit, even though sometimes he's more of a hindrance than a help. The thing is, the public likes him. He's gregarious and charming, but behind the scenes it's said that, and I quote, he depends on luck, he is jealous of others, he does sloppy work, he steals credit for the achievements of others. Harsh. No one seems to know who Crackerjack really is. His superhero identity takes up much of his persona. His arc culminates in him being career-endingly injured in the process of teaming up with one of Astro City's enemies to attempt to bolster his failing body, as he was starting to age out of the hero business after being active for over 20 years. Teaming up with an enemy for one's own selfish reasons didn't endear him to all the heroes, though some did understand. He's still the same Ray he always was though. though, and is working to recover from his injuries with the help of Quarrel, who he still hasn't told his name to. So yeah, does he deserve the hate? Sorta. Kinda. Most of the time. Most of the time lands you at number 9. Number 8. Damian Wayne. Controversial, I know, and I can feel the keys. How dare you? Damian Wayne's the GOAT. Well, here's the thing. Damian Wayne ranges a lot based on how he's written, and in canon there are many who can't stand him, or have to put up with him in a kind of, oh, Damian, what a precocious child, calling women trollops and whores, belittling his father for his own rape, kidnapping Superboy, even though they become good friends, and that was a very cute comic. He takes his father's paranoia to a whole new level, and just in general is rude to everyone. Damian is not as hated as he would be by the other heroes because he is a child, so he gets a lot of leeway and the potential to grow out of it, which he sometimes does until a writer decides to take him back to base. Damian is constantly being forced to learn to get along with others, thanks to his upbringing with Raish and Talia and the League of Assassins. To say he's antisocial would be an understatement, though a lot of it does stem from a place of insecurity. Damian is constantly mean to those around him, no matter how much they help or go to the mat for him. They give him infinite chances though, but for those who give up and give in to the hate, it's not that undeserved. Yes, he's 13, I'm aware. All I'm saying is those futures where he turns out evil, I believe. Still, I hold out hope for good writers and nuanced portrayals. It happens. Let's just stay away from the Damian who tells his father to cover his drink. That's disgusting.
If this trollop provides some carnal release, so be it. But I needn't bring up your past poor choices in women, including but not limited to my mother.
Damian, I'm not...
Not that I'm ungrateful here, mind you. However, I must insist that you use protection. And another thing, cover your drink.
Goodbye, Damian.
Number 7. Emma Frost. Now, Emma Frost started off her comic career as a villain, first debuting in the Uncanny X-Men number 129 back in 1980. She was the White Queen of the Hellfire Club. She eventually would end up joining and leading the X-Men for a bit. Here's the thing, now the X-Men have a better track record at this than other teams, but villains, reformed or otherwise, can be a hard sell for everyone to trust. She is also just as devious as her other half can be. Her and Cyclops were well matched. She lied about how he died in order for the mutants to declare war on the Inhumans, and while her methods don't always line up with the rest of the X-Men, she even reassumed control of the Hellfire Club in order to fix mutant kind her own way. But now it's House of X, or as some are arguing House of 10, hashtag House of X. We'll see how things shake up. Emma is hated for the lies, for the lack of trust, and her willingness to go back to her old ways, and use people to her own end. I love Emma, but some of the hate deserved. Number 6. Omni-Man. We're heading over to Robert Kirkman's indie mega comic Invincible for this number. Omni-Man appears in the first issue of Invincible and is the father of the lead, Mark Grayson. Omni-Man is the Superman amalgam of this universe, the hero. He comes from another planet, heralding a mission of peace and prosperity. He married a human woman and had a son, is part of a league of heroes and seeks to keep the world safe, or so it seemed. It turned out in a twist that occurred several issues in that Omni-Man had not been sent to improve the Earth but to conquer it. He bred with an Earth woman to create an heir and equal to help him in his conquest. And when it is revealed, he goes and kills most of the Earth's top tier heroes. This obviously turns the planet's population and the remaining heroes against him, including his own son, who would go on to have quite a complex relationship with him. So yeah, turning on the planet you claimed you were protecting? Hate deserved. Number 5. Professor X. Professor X has veered quite widely from the character he was when he first debuted back in the X-Men number 1 back in 1963. Since then, he has amassed a whole host of questionable actions. It's been revealed that he's repressed memories, hidden the sentience of the Danger Room, mind-wiped people like erasing Magneto and creating Onslaught through the activation of the dark portions of his mind, being part of secret clandestine dealings. Over the years, a lot of his students or allies have come to hate him because of the lies and breaches in trust, compounded by the image he presents of himself, which can come across to some people as holier than thou. Xavier now goes by X, as he is Charles's mind and Phantom X's body. This is following some Shadow King shenanigans. Honestly, these betrayals cut deep, and for those who do hate him, it makes sense. No judgment here. Number 4. The Homelander. That's right, the boys. So this applies to comic Homelander and TV series Homelander, who both abuse their power quite a bit in different ways, but heinous ones. The Homelander is an arrogant, self-centered, false hero. He is manipulative, and for those who know who he really is, the hate is deserved. To find out, your heroes are sexual predators, murderers, cold, calculating cynics more interested in making a profit than helping, are untrained and regularly cause deaths because, well, yeah, that's a lot of reasons to hate. And maybe for some to form some kind of secret team to keep an eye on them. The Homelander may be a bit more sympathetic in the series, a tiny bit, just a smidge, but he still deserves most of the hate he gets. pretty much all of it. Number 3. Cyclops. So a lot of you are quite salty that Cyclops wasn't on part 1, like it was a travesty. So Cyclops, what a journey. Now I like Cyclops, but he is a jerk. But that's part of what makes him interesting, to me at least. Cyclops was one of the original members of the X-Men and the de facto leader for a lot of the points of the team's history. Here's the thing, Cyclops takes an antagonistic approach to leadership. The person you set yourself up against a lot of times rather than the person you are inspired by. This results in him oftentimes being cold and not that empathetic. Add to that his rigidness and desire to please authority figures, and he has a lot of traits people dislike in real life, and it also comes across in the comics. Then as it went on, Cyclops, oh boy, he's gotten pretty dictatorial and sanctioned all kinds of things, is willing to separate kids from parents, and on the whole has just become someone you need to walk on eggshells around. There's a baseline of Cyclops from lots of people within the Marvel universe, and as much as I like him, it makes complete sense. But you need characters like that, it's an interesting contrast. You're definitely not gonna forget Cyclops anytime soon. The fictional world needs a jerk or two. Number 2. Batman. Now I love Batman, many people do, but in universe he has his detractors, especially modern post-identity crisis Batman, which is when canonically you started to see a real shift towards paranoid contingency plan Batman. There have been numerous plots about Batman having a plan to take down his allies. Most notable is Tower of Babel. Everyone else here on staff says Babel, and now I live in a world of uncertainty. Batman is tracking people, friend and foe alike. He will go out of his way to defend his enemies, even the Joker, and this has not endeared him to people. Such as the plot where Batman argued that the Joker shouldn't be executed. How do you think Commissioner Gordon felt about that? Let's not even visit Jason. He's at home flipping a table. Even Nightwing hated him for a while after he fired him from being Robin and replaced him very quickly after with Jason. Guy hates him, one punch and all that. To some of his allies, he's an uptight, paranoid stick in the mud, and they worry that one day he could snap, which he also has a contingency plan for. Batman is complicated, but I'm a sucker for him. What can I say? Give me all the Bat Dad. I'm basic. It's fine. Where's my pumpkin spice? Don't get triggered. Enough of us love Batman to make up for the people in canon who hate him. Number 1. The Plutonian. We're going indie for number 1. We're looking at Irredeemable, an entire series dealing with the breakdown of this title hero. The Plutonian is a dark look at what could have been if Superman had not had the temperament to be a hero, coupled with a series of unfortunate events happening to him, such as revealing his secret identity to his lady love only for her to reject him and spread his identity to the whole world, destroying his life and forcing him even further into isolation. The Plutonian ends up going on a killing spree, destroying the world's heroes and innocents alike. In fact, the title is a hint to the fact that he has become irredeemable. While they do a good job exploring how this all happened, for those who hate the Plutonian, it makes perfect sense. He's terrifying. Superhearing was a part of all this. I warned you all about the superhearing.
Number 10. Black Widow. Okay, so obviously I love Natasha, but there are some pretty terrible things that she has done, especially the ultimate version of her, and for that her character deserves some hate. Or maybe Mark Miller, who created the Marvel Ultimate Universe, deserves some hate, but regardless, someone definitely deserves some hate. Natasha has been known to use her feminine wiles to get her way and manipulate people only to betray them, but she usually does so for the greater good. In the Ultimate series, however, we see her get close to Tony only to betray him and the United States. And when Tony is genuinely surprised by this, as I think we all kind of were, she asks him what he expected, as she is after all a Russian spy. Wow, I mean, someone deserves the hate for the way her character is presented at least. Seriously, Natasha? Why though? She also kills Jarvis in this series. Oh, and her and Tony have a sex tape. Oh, Ultimates. Number 9. Jason Todd. So in my mind, all Robins have deserved some hate at some point. They all have a bit of a brattiness to them that just makes you want to hate them. Jason Todd included. While he has now been redeemed in many fans' eyes when he went off to do his own thing as the Red Hood, he was previously disliked by fans. He only originally died in the comics because so many called into DC to vote him killed, after DC left a statement at the back of the comics, letting readers know that his fate would be left in their hands. After he was resurrected, he did the same thing a lot of Robins have done that royally bothers Batman, threatened to kill people, and then actually killed some people. Granted, his focus was to kill Gotham's criminals, but this still has never set well with Batman. And he really hates when his Robins can't follow the Bat family code of not killing. It's so easy, guys, just don't kill. Jason even tried to become the Bat in Bruce's absence, and did such a dreadful job that the Robins had to fight him to take it back. Everyone knows that job belonged to Dick Grayson. Number 8. Midnighter. Midnighter is violent to a fault. His abilities allow him to see the outcome outcome of situations which he could use to avoid violence and resolve things as neatly and cleanly as possible. However, while he uses his precognitive abilities to win a fight, he actually immensely enjoys violence, which means sometimes he'll drag out that fight. If you think I'm exaggerating, you should check out his Grindr profile in the comics. Yikes. His gratuitous violence is part of the reason why he deserves the hate, unless you are really into that sort of thing, and then maybe to you he just deserves more love. The hero out of DC's Wildstorm universe was once married to his teammate Apollo. While we were sad to see the gay couple's marriage dissolve, it seems fair given how much of a jerk Midnighter is. In the comics, we even see a time where he walks out on Apollo after declaring he already knows how this fight is going to end. Not even trying for a resolution? Talk about undervaluing your relationship. Number 7. Captain Ultra. Captain Ultra may have been lurking in the background, but that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve some hate too. The only reason he is ranked so low on this list actually is because he is a background character. Other than the fact that he has amazing powers, everything else about him kinda makes the reader and the characters want to hate him. He is often presented as being cocky and arrogant as a hero. His costume is also pretty heinous. Beyond that, even other heroes in the comics tend to try and distance themselves from him. They usually aren't perceived as liking him too much. He initially lays claim to Hellcat when he meets her because he's attracted to her, as though she is some kind of object that, he could lay claim to. And he attacks the Avengers! Sure, he's part of Wonder Man's Revengers at the time, so it comes as no surprise, but his reason for joining the team is because he was jealous of the Avenger team and held a grudge against them after they denied him membership. Basically, Captain Ultra is an overpowered whiny baby. I hate whiny babies. Just kidding. Babies are fine. Number 6. Superior Spider-Man. Some people have expressed that Spider-Man gets hate from other Marvel heroes and that he gets some audience hate for his love life. While I would agree that this can be a bit of an issue for the web-slinger Peter Parker, I don't think any version of Spider-Man has ever seen or deserved as much hate as Superior Spider-Man. Some may want to argue that Doc Ock's version of Spider-Man can't be seen as a hero due to the fact that Doc Ock himself is so villainous, but I would argue that Superior Spider-Man represents a merging of the two minds and that his goal was to be a better hero than Spider-Man himself. Well, that and, avoid dying. From trapping Peter Parker's consciousness in his dying body to the violent ways he decides to dole out justice, Superior Spider-Man has received a lot of internal and external hate for his behavior. Beyond that, he pridefully boasted that he was the best Spider-Man, but then could not even stop the Green Goblin. Also, he deserves some hate for punching Black Cat and knocking out one of her teeth. Number 5. Iron Man. Well, we may all love Tony Stark today due to Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of him in the MCU. Let's be honest, Robert Downey Jr. is basically Iron Man. We also have to acknowledge some of his history, and it is some of his past choices that haven't always made him quite so loved by fans and fellow Avengers teammates. Let's go to one of my favorite events to lovingly hate, The Crossing. In this event, Tony was the bad guy after we found out that he was working for Kang the entire time. The Hail Hydra scenario before that was a thing. Either way, equally awful. His involvement in the storyline was also kind of beyond bizarre. What's worse is that this isn't the only time Tony's been presented as the bad guy. Nope. Let's not forget the events of Civil War, where he played Captain Marvel's role a la Civil War II, being the bad guy who sought to control and restrict all supers. He was also quite villainous in the events of Superior Iron Man, which explored a reality where evil Tony was able to shield himself from Scarlet Witch's spell to undo the weird superhero supervillain persona